Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to chat with amazing humans about their journey with mental health. For this episode, I'm so happy to be joined by Simon Scott Nelson. Welcome, Simon.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. So as I do, just very briefly, I'll give a quick introduction to Simon, then I'm going to let him do his proper introduction. Simon and I have met through mutual connections, through mental health, and in one area in particular where I work is the business travel industry. And Simon's interested in getting involved in more conversations around travel and well-being and all the work around well-being. So we met a few weeks ago, we had our first discussion, and it just became very apparent we're both on very similar journeys when it comes to mental health and the conversation as support to mental well-being. So I'll let you do your introduction, Simon, but welcome. So good to see you.
Thank you. Yeah, our paths crossed, didn't they? So my name is Simon Scott Nelson, founder of Wellity. Wellity is a leading solution for well-being in the workplace. It was found really from a compulsion to normalize the conversation around mental health. That at its core, we want to get organizations across the world to unite, learn, and normalize that conversation. I suppose if I take you back slightly as to where it started, I had a small group of estate agents, which I sold, and then had some time on my hand to do something philanthropic and started a business to help children's health fight against childhood obesity. And whilst we were doing that, we had a degree of success with my eldest working with Jamie Oliver on the Bite Back 2030 campaign for the government. But lots of other things happen. I say that to try and impress you because we had some England rugby players wearing our stuff and all this other stuff. Yep. And again, when I was going through setting that up, I was using those sound bites to try and impress people. There was another story that was going on underneath, really, which was one of complete burnout, in so much as working late hours, really late hours. But at the same time, I was isolated, which is, a prevalent conversation now. Yep. And remotely on my own, but also the relationship was going, the house was being sold, the dogs went, and a lot of things that were held dear to me went. So I suppose, when we speak in mental health about the one thing that sometimes really puts someone in a spin, in a downward spiral, and there's something catastrophic, that wasn't the case with me. It was a series of events over a period of time. And what I'm very aware of now, and certainly through COVID-19, is I see that happening a lot, whereas individually something could happen to someone and normally they would deal with that well, they'd be strong enough to take that on. Your power and your strength goes by about the 6th, 7th, 8th one that hits, and if you've got redundancy, kids at home, any ill health, heaven forbid something graver happens, it's enough to take you over the edge. So what I am conscious about is that 5th, 6th, 7th element happening to someone that really kind of takes them under. And Wellity was started out of a compulsion. I couldn't understand why no one was talking about mental health and these things that I was experiencing, like financial anxiety, like anxiety in general, state of panic, was not being talked about. I was in the sales industry, you see, from the estate agency, etc. And sales is a funny thing because your trajectory has to, in terms of your sales figures, has to keep going up. But of course, as humans, you're like that. And there are times when you're down and people drag yourself up each day. And that I found exhausting. And I was at a European sales conference one time, and we had our now ambassador, Simon Weston, CB, who's a Wellity ambassador now. But he was doing a keynote talk from the Falklands. And after the red wine that we were having around the table, I was with about 8 or 9 guys, and we'd had another couple of pints. It was that sort of 11, 12, 1 o'clock period, all very excited. And then I opened up about what happened to me. And honestly, I can tell you, like dominoes around the table, one after another, everyone had a story from something that was happening to themselves or in their family. And I just vowed that day that there's no way it should take, a bottle of Malbec and 6 or 7 pints to have to talk about something that so. And then Wellity is up and running. I'm the chair of the Institute Sales and Management Mental Health and Wellbeing Committee, which is terrific. That's a UK accreditation body for salespeople, and we've got 5 pages in their magazine coming out next week just to highlight the importance of mental health, certainly within the sales industry. And from the sales industry. Obviously, it's expanded into all industries now, and that's where we are today.
Wow. Interesting. Lots of things that we're going to go and talk about, and and where you are with Wellity, what you're doing. We'll talk about the plans and your vision for that in the future towards the end of this session. But it's a really interesting sort of way that you put the perspective out there, and this is your story, of course. I'd like to go into some of those sort of moments where things were changing for you. So, talk about it in the way that you saw it at the time, how you felt, what was going on inside, because it's useful for people to connect to feelings. Of course, that's what we're trying to help people to do. So you talked about changes. So when and how and what happened? Can you define those a little bit more?
Yeah, it was a slippery slope, really. So I was working pretty much on my own remotely. My sounding board was myself, but my sounding board was an inner critic that was loud and noisy and fairly angry. I speak of it, if it was in type, it would be in bold and capitals and probably underlined. It was very dismissive of me. It was very patronizing. It was very abusive in some ways. It would befriend me at times in the evening when it says, go on, have a drink, get rid of me, quieten me down. So you'd neck a bottle of a red or whatever it was, and then you knew that it was just duping you, that it was doing that to weaken you and come back and really clout you in the nose the next morning when it had taken your powers, when you had a hangover. So there was nothing about my inner critic that was positive. There's a story of when I proved it wrong. It was the greatest 25 minutes of my life, which changed everything.
Right.
But at the time it was angry, and my financial anxiety sitting behind a computer. This is actually very therapeutic, by the way, Matt, because I'm usually interviewing people. So I've never actually been interviewed myself.
I love it. Bring it on.
My financial anxiety sitting behind the screen was, I was 42, 43 at the time, but in my head, I was 65, 70.
Wow.
It fast forwarded me to the point of failure. It fast forwarded me. When you think, I've got to create a vision of success. So I'll dream of myself where I want to be and then work back so that everything in between is a hurdle. It was the opposite to that. It was, I'm going to be a failure. This is what's going to have no pension, no money, no everything else. I won't have achieved anything. So you end up living in that reality, which is a horrible place to be. And I remember, in terms of the financial anxiety, I was going past a massive, great warehouse that wanted stackers, shelf stackers, and it said shelf stackers required experience needed, and I realized I didn't even have experience for that. And so what it did to me was wipe out any memory of building an estate agency business, hiring 30, 40, 50 staff in Exeter and Bath, buying and acquiring letting agencies, going through all the due diligence and sale and exit of that, successful sale and exit. Couldn't remember a thing of it. I was literally judging myself on the very day when I had nothing. And that was the worst state of panic for me, is that I couldn't remember, or my mind was telling me that's because you fluked it, or it didn't actually happen. And that's quite a scary place to be in, because you feel yourself almost going into battle with your arms tied behind your back. And the general feeling for me was one of lying on my back on the floor with a foot on my chest. I just knew something inside of me knew that I could do more. I was capable of doing more, but my body wasn't letting me.
Wow. It's incredible. So when that changed, you said there was a story in there about the 25 minutes. What was the 25 minutes?
Yeah, so there was a couple of things. One is my sister-in-law was just telling me to trust life. She used to just say, calm down. It was a state of panic. She used to say, trust today, and look after today, and trust tomorrow will look after you.
Yep.
I.e., stop trying to control everything. Stop trying to my main thing really that got me through, still gets me through today, is that, I know this is going to be a bit odd holding this, but it's a snow globe. Yep. And in the middle you've got this. But the way I relate my panic and anxiety was that I was continuously shaking the snow globe. Right? I was continuously shaking. It had all my dreams and aspirations of work, family, failure, everything else. And what Ying said to me, my sister, was just put it down. Put it down, because the only way you're ever going to see what's in the middle and where you can best harness your focus is to stop, let the snow settle, see what's in the middle, whether it's that lovely country house in a normal snow globe that's covered in snow, or in this case, you've got this. Take a 10 count rather than trying to bounce back up on 2 each time and fight on weak legs, and just relax. And I did. I had to stop. I stopped, and I took a job. I stopped the business,
Okay.
against childhood obesity, and that was the best thing that really happened to me in terms of the story, because from then I vowed that once I got my strength back and my shield, I would use the past rather than forget it. I'd bring it in and let it play a part in my future. So to do that had to be around mental health, had to be around my appreciation for mental health.
Well, I find that fascinating. There's so many sort of parallels in the way that we've obviously both been through experiences, and obviously you're talking about yours, and I've spoken openly about my experience as well. But it had to have that point of clarity that I needed to recognize that things weren't right, that things weren't going in the right direction, and mine was a crisis point, as much as yours is a crisis point that you've been through as well. So coming back then and starting that next thing, where did the energy come from? Where did you find that energy?
The 25 minutes that changed my life was, and I mean, I don't mean this in any sort of, hallelujah or anything else. It's not really a blueprint that anyone else could follow.
No.
I was at my mum's in Maidenhead, and I went for a run. I started running, which is a bit of a savior in itself. And I thought, well, I'll go and run around Dorney Lake. And Dorney Lake in Windsor is where they did the Olympics. It's pretty much a 5K circuit around this lovely lake. Really easy to measure. And on this day, it was beautiful sunshine. I was pretty down, but it was beautiful sunshine. And I turned out and there was a half marathon going on around the thing. So I thought, oh, I've blown it again. Inner critic's going, you can't even go for a run. And the chap at the gate said, do you want to, are you here for the run? And I said, yes. I wasn't here for that run, but I was here for my run. So I thought, I am lying, but not.
Yeah.
And he said, well, if you are, there's free parking down the bottom. And it was packed, and there was this lovely free car park down the bottom. I thought, oh, something's looking up, and it's lovely weather.
Yep.
So I went in, parked up, started immersing myself amongst the runners. I obviously covered up my label, because I didn't have one, started running. And I was going to do about 5K, maybe 10K at best, 2 loops. And the inner critic was going, I bet you can't do that. You're tired, aren't you? You've got a 3-hour drive back to Exeter after this. You better. And I thought, I won't tell you the expletive that I said, but for obvious reasons. But I did say, do you know what? No, I can't go on like this anymore. I can't listen to you. You're wrong. I know I can run more. And I vowed for myself, I did 5K, 10K, 15K. And I kept going. I thought, by that time, the inner critic had slowed down a bit because it was being proved wrong.
Yep.
And I thought, you know what? I'm going to bully you now. I've really had enough. If I can prove that my mind is wrong and can be wrong, you haven't got any power over me. It's like exposing a bully. So I did 5K, 10K, 20K, 25K. And at 25K, I wasn't a runner. So I was really feeling it. And then I thought, nah, come on, one more. I am going to run, and until my legs physically can't move, to prove this wrong. So I'm just going to keep going, block out the mind. And I did. I came in at 30K. I did one more. And I just realized I don't need to listen to you anymore. I don't know if you've ever had that in a relationship or anything else. The penny drops. And from that was 2 lovely ladies on the jetty near the clubhouse who said, are you all right? Because I was like a bit emotional and everything else. Even thinking about it makes me feel a bit emotional. And I said, yeah, I've just done this long run. Like 30K. Yeah, don't worry. I'm not boasting. It's a lot more than I've done before.
Yeah.
But the reason was I suffer from anxiety. And I've got this inner critic that keeps telling me I can't do stuff. So I wanted to prove something it was wrong. And the only way I can do it is myself and run until my legs don't move. And then with one of the ladies said she had suffered from anxiety as well. And we started talking through it. And from then on, I just thought, you've got to go first. If you're in this business that we're in, and you've got a compulsion to help people, the authentic side of you just says, I'm going to go first, because that's a key. It's like a superpower to unlocking other people tell their story. And I know you feel the same way.
Yeah.
And I just think that moment when I went first and she came back and we had a lovely conversation, she took a photo of me. I'm on the jetty, I'm doing, the bolt. And I'll never forget that moment. I'll never forget how I feel. And since then, I say to people, talk to yourself as if you're a 5-year-old child, and just say, are you all right? How are you doing? And if someone comes up to you and says, I haven't done this today, I haven't been for a run, or I haven't eaten the right food, you don't call them names. You wouldn't do that to a 5-year-old child, would you? You'd say, all right, let's talk about it, let's think about it. Maybe we just take the rest of the day off and we'll come back tomorrow. And now the volume's dropped in my head. I am a friend with myself, so I give myself a break. Yes, if I there are times when it starts to get a bit loud, but I'll put it back in its place and just take myself back to that run and just say, you weren't right, you're not right. And my advice would be really, if just in some way prove your own mind wrong,
Yeah.
because it is wrong, isn't it? And being abusive to anyone is wrong, certainly over a sustained period of time. And allow yourself, give yourself that permission to want more, to want to be happy.
I just think that's an incredible story. I really, it's obviously so many different parts to it that are just so poignant in all of this conversation of mental health. That inner critic, the inner voice, just silencing it a bit. And I'm a runner as well, and one of the hardest things about running isn't the physical element of running; it's the mental element. It's the as soon as you've lost it in your mind, you're not going to do it, and you want to stop. And I've done that many times in half marathons. And I was thinking 30K. That's more than a half marathon. That's like halfway again to a full marathon, so only 42K to a full marathon, and I just find that incredible and impressive. But it shows that with the right mental attitude and by challenging those thoughts, actually everything is possible.
Well, I think it was March last year when we were in full lockdown. I couldn't see my two daughters because they were in quarantine. I couldn't see my mum for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
She was in Maidenhead, and I went out, and you and I talk about this reframing when you are running.
Yep.
And so that this doesn't sound boastful, what I will say is that last week I went out and I thought I'm going to do a half marathon. I did 2 kilometers, and I don't know if you certainly don't, but I do. And I felt lumpy. I felt heavy. I felt as if my t-shirt was too tight. And once that creeps in, you might as well give up because you're not enjoying it. And instead of coming back, I went on a 14K walk listening to podcasts. So that was the voice in my head that said, mate, come on, you obviously don't feel like running, perhaps let's walk. And last March I did a marathon. So I went out and I just wanted to, it was sunny, we were in lockdown, and the only way you could go outside was if you were exercising. So I thought, well, hang on, I'll just tootle along, set a really slow pace. And it was like up to Exeter to Exmouth and back. And I realized it was like 41 kilometers, which was the equivalent. I mean, my legs were knackered, my legs were exhausted.
Yeah, of course.
But it was just better than sitting inside on a really sunny day. And that was framing. So I'd be interested in how you frame it when you do it as well.
Yeah, I don't beat myself up anymore. I really do. If and I've been injured on the injury bench now for 3 weeks. I'm recovering from sciatica, and I was doing run every day. I got to 150 miles, and my body just, and that wasn't in one go, but by the way, that was over 24 days. But and then my body just said, you've done too much, and so it's been frustrating. But I've been out with my dog. I take my dog out. I get out. I go out during the day, get some fresh air, and I don't let the bully of my brain stop me from doing activity. That's the reality. So it would be like, oh yeah, but don't forget you got a pain in your backside, which is quite literally what it was or what it is. But I'm like, no, I know that's there. I'm looking after it in other ways. So I get out, and it is, I'm just about to go back to start doing some very light running, jogging, whatever you want to call it. But I'm looking forward to it. I really am. I've found my mojo again a little bit, and I think that's the challenge, isn't it? It sort of goes in peaks and troughs, like you said about sales, and we're doing all these visual aids for people who are listening to this on a podcast, of course. So I was doing like the snake hand, the roller coaster hand.
That's right.
But sales targets go up, yet our mental health fluctuates up and down all the time. And one thing I do want to bring into this, and you mentioned it in your opening as well, was this conversation where you were sat around a table with a bit of Dutch courage. You'd had a few drinks, and you had this event going on. So you've gone and started this children's charity, this organization looking after, talking about obesity and things, and then having these conversations. And you said something really important in there, which was you started and opened the door, like you did with those two ladies actually at Dorney. So what happened, sort of the conversations, what were people saying in those? I'm intrigued. All men sat around the table, I guess, mostly men.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened a load of times since. I think we all we all have demons, but there's still this, I'm interested in using male stereotypes. So whether it be rugby players or whether it be construction industry.
Yep.
Because why would you necessarily, when you're certainly in a sales environment, you spent 20 years building your image and brand, and your wage is reflected in your past brand. you effectively, people still think they're risking it. And what's happening now, by saying they're normal, by the way, risking it by saying they're normal.
Yep.
What's happened in the last year is that everyone's realized everyone's normal. We do come to meetings in hoodies. We do have kids in the background. We do have cats that run over our desks. We do have whatever it is. And so there is that realization that we are all normal. Now, it would be daft if I was sitting here in a shirt and tie, because you'd be like, oh, I know you're not in a full suit, I hope, or something. And it's that authenticity. So I think we've broken down the barrier to realizing we're all normal and that we all have issues. But, it was surprising, though, is whether it were people talking about their family or people who had contemplated, doing something to themselves in the past. But it was such a lovely, safe environment, mainly because we knew that we probably wouldn't remember it the next day.
Maybe.
But vulnerability is the new strength. And this is what we're saying to senior leaders. We really want to, as long as it's authentic. As long as it's authentic. If you want to show that you're a strong leader and you want people to think, we've been through a crisis. How do you want to be remembered after this crisis has finished? What do you want people to say? And really, you've just got to do something and go first and open up the conversation.
Yeah, it's so simple, isn't it? Yeah, and it takes so much in it. The challenge is, a lot of people say, yeah, but I'm scared if I go first, what's going to happen? And you, from your experience, I can definitely talk from my experience, going first has never been a negative thing. It really does open up the opportunity, and it sets a playing field that says, it's okay, right? We're all in this together. None of us are getting out alive. That's a reality, but we are all working together, so let's be open, let's be honest. And I know that's what you've said in yours.
But so they're human traits, aren't they? They're just human traits. So otherwise you're pretending that you're something, if someone says they've never had a problem, they've never done this, look at that person, because there's, and good luck if they haven't, and well done. But I'm sure all of us have at some point been touched by mental health, whether it be us or colleagues, friends and family.
I don't even think we need to look at data to prove that. I think it has, absolutely. I think the challenge is we don't recognize mental health as something we all have first, and everything we do and everything we say. And you said it earlier as well, which was interesting again, which was, this is quite therapeutic, talking openly like this. Usually you're doing the other side, so you're the one interviewing, and that's important as well to recognize, isn't it? It's sort of allowing people the chance to say it. Sometimes it's important too.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. You ask away, because I had life coaching at the time, and it was then that said, what did she say? She said, you've got to give yourself permission to be happy. And that was a thing. I was driving around, and then one day I started singing to a song in the car, and I realized, I was like, oh my God, I've not sung in the car for months.
Right. Yeah.
And what I'm really interested in at Wellity is, when you're on that scary trajectory down, is when you haven't been talking about mental health in the past, you don't know where the bottom is. You don't know what anxiety is. You get scared by the word depression. You get scared by all these words. Only after you talked about it now, you know that it's going to bottom out at some point. You trust life. And something's going to happen. It's trying to get to people preventative before they get down, to see what the blueprint is of, can we save more people from, hitting the bottom, and how do we get people to, and usually that third-party verification, isn't it? It's like somebody asking, not so much, are you okay, which then puts the emphasis back onto you, but for someone to say, look, do you mind if I have a chat with you? Because I'm feeling down. They're feeling down. Suddenly you puff your chest out a bit, and it gives you a bit of purpose that you could help someone. And I'm really interested in that bit.
Oh, absolutely. We can all learn and do our bit to just encourage more of that to happen and make it more accessible to people. The conversation has to be normalized. We know that. We need to be open about the way that we're really feeling. So if I feel rubbish today, I need to be able to tell you. And you that as well. I've got an interesting question. Well, I think it's an interesting question. You might not. When I've spoken to executives before, and I know you deal with executives too, they say we don't have a problem with mental health. How would you address that question?
Well, it's always going to be there. It just means they don't know about it. Now, I don't blame senior leaders. I look at the way football used to be managed in that old Brian Clough way, where it was booze, banter, and burnout. Right, and I see a lot of this in companies as well, still from senior leaders who are perhaps of the older generation, and they've been hardwired that way. It's not their fault. That's how they had to act. They have to assume the identity of who was their boss before. Now, what happens is now, I believe, is that within senior leaders, there's the language. You know, we're all worried now. We're in this environment where you can get a good rollicking for saying the wrong word. So you might want to be trying to talk about it, but I'm scared because I don't want to say the word mental. You know, mental was an insult in the playground when I was a child, to be mental. Now we're asking people to put their hand up and say, I'm effectively suffering from mental health. So it's not their fault. They may be scared of using the terminology. If someone came up to them and said, I've got anxiety, and they suddenly go, I don't know what it is. We do training courses on the language to use for senior leaders. It's open heart, open head, mind. And it's just saying, well, these are the terms that you can and can't use, or you can use. We never want to tell anyone off. If someone comes to you saying they've got some issues, for goodness sake, don't tell them off because the grammar they use. You wouldn't to a 5-year-old child, would you? And say, no, you're using the wrong term. Go away and come back, and they just won't. You won't see them again. So we ask leaders to, let's go through a course, use all the terminology. This is what you can say. This is what you should say. This is maybe how it's changed over the time, so that they just don't get scared and not raise it at all. So we don't blame senior leaders. That's an education piece. It really is. And we embrace it because you have to, otherwise it scares them off. And also with senior leaders, it's looking at the ROI of presenteeism, et cetera, and all the problems that come with not managing or believing you don't have it just because the EAP says that there's not, you know, the trends aren't that much, but actually the take up on the EAP is only about 2-3%.
Oh, don't. It's a recurring conversation I have with lots of people at the moment. You know, great services, great supports, great systems, if people use them and if they know they're there. Even
no one manages it.
Well, this is the challenge, right? So we're on the quest to make sure people are educated and aware of these things. You know what, we're nearly at the time. We're nearly at the end of this, believe it or not. I can't believe how quickly this one's gone. I'm going to give you the floor just to do a few things, just to sort of galvanize the people listening, give them some insights and anything else. And also around where where you see your vision of this going for what you're doing. And, you know, so over to you, really. Anything, final words, Jerry Springer style, as I like to say?
No, just normalize the conversation around mental health and realize that you are not the first person that's going to be going through it. Others have. And you know what, you might be doing someone else a real favor by starting the conversation, because they might be suffering and they might want to be looking at you to open up. When it comes to well-being within the workplace, don't just think that we can position something like to have a meeting next Tuesday to talk about mental health. Don't just instruct mental health trainers by starting the conversation. Sometimes a little information is dangerous and you need to have the support mechanisms in place in case there are triggers, etc. The well-being industry is becoming overloaded at the moment with people who perhaps aren't fully qualified but are changing over into whether it be coaching or well-being experts. And we do ask for a degree of accreditation. Everyone at Wellity has been fully accredited and to a high standard, and we do have the support mechanisms in place. We have engagement videos to advertise your courses throughout your organization as well, so that you don't just put these courses on and no one listens to them or participates. We want to up the engagement rate. And basically, Wellity wants to make a tangible difference that's centered on an authentic realization that something has to change. And it will change, and it is changing, but we are just trying to speed that up.
Brilliant. Sounds great. Sounds interesting. I'll put the links to all of your things into the post as it goes out as well. And I do have one final question for you, Simon. How are you feeling?
I am all right in myself. I am working hard at the moment. I've got a very conscious eye on the amount of work, trying to do that digital hours I'm working, trying to do that digital detox at night, trying to look after my nutrition, sleep. Got the old lavender spray on the pillows. I'll try anything to get a good night's sleep now. And we have lots of experts as well. As you said, they're easy to draw upon for their information. But do you know what? I'm coping. I'm all right. I would say if I wasn't. And I'm encouraged about helping people when it comes to this area.
Brilliant stuff. Well, I'm glad to hear that things are okay. And the lavender on the pillow sounds like a wonderful trick. We've done that a few times, I think. thank you so much for taking part in this with me and spending half an hour just chatting about mental health. I think it's such an important conversation. Of course, I think it's an important conversation. I know you do too. If anybody who's listening is struggling, if you do have any worries, concerns, or challenges, no, there is always somebody out there that you can turn to talk to. Often we feel alone, isolated, and not able to sort of reach out and chat. And as Simon and I have both been talking about, maybe sometimes just saying it first can really help.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to know anything else about Wellity, it's wellityglobal.com.
Okay.
Or be Wellity on our social medias. But what I would like to say about is it's been a pleasure to be on here. You're a credit to people trying to help with their mental health. I know what you've been doing with your podcast, etc. So, from me to you, keep up the good work. It's an absolute pleasure to be on here. Honestly, is been watching your work, and we were talking about some of the differences that you've made with people already. Long may it last. Collaboration is the key. It's going to take all of us, but brilliant work.
It is.
So
thank you. No, I really do appreciate that as well. And if anybody does need that extra help, Samaritans is always available to call 116-123, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So please know there is always someone there. I hate to think anybody listening to this feels lonely, isolated, and unable to talk to anyone. There's always somebody. Simon, we're done. It's all great. So thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks, man.
Cheers.